So hello everyone and welcome to another episode where today we take a look at the Zoroastrian concept of man. So how does Zoroastrianism view the role of man in the universe, as well as what role does the human person play with regards to the cosmic struggle between good and evil? So first and foremost, we see that in Zoroastrianism, the concept of man is in a way intricately tied to the cosmological and metaphysical frameworks of the religion. In this way, we see that Zoroastrian teachings view humanity as playing a central role in the cosmic struggle between good and evil. And therefore, we see that man, in a way, is regarded as a microcosm. That means a small universe which reflects the greater cosmos. And in this way, we see that the human person is endowed with both mortal as well as immortal elements. Now, we see that these ideas are in a way expanded upon, or they are found in the Bundahishn, that is the Zoroastrian text dealing with creation and cosmology. Now, when we look at the microcosm and mortality, well, according to the Bundahishn, man is a microcosm of the universe. So in a way, we see that whatever happens in the universe, that is the complexities as well as the conflicts, are very much also reflected in the human person. And we see that this connection is important, especially in the context of cosmic dualism. And we see that it is in this concept of cosmic dualism, humanity becomes a battleground. A battleground for the forces of good and evil. As we know, good associated with Ahura Mazda and evil associated with Angra Mainyu. And therefore, the concept of humanity's role in the microcosm, it links man to the larger struggle for cosmic order and justice. Now, while we see that man is mortal, death is not seen as the end. And therefore we see that mortality is viewed, or death is viewed, as the evil spirits attack on creation. And therefore we see that the creation is there, which is good, but because of the attack of the evil on creation, it results in mortality or death. Now we see that even though death is inevitable, okay, that it is guaranteed that the person will die, we see that humans still possess 5 immortal aspects that continue beyond the death. Now let's take a look at these. What are these 5, in a way, immortal aspects that continue after the death of the body? First is life, or ahu, which is the vital force or life principle in humans. Next is Daind or religion, and we see that this represents both religious consciousness of the individual as well as the divine truth or the religion that they follow. So now we see that in Zoroastrian belief, this Daind is playing quite a significant role in the afterlife. And it is said that in the afterlife, this Daind or religion appears as a personified being that is based on how the individual lived. Then you have Bauda or knowledge. Now this refers to both spiritual as well as divine knowledge. And in a way, this is a key attribute that elevates the human soul and connects it to higher realities. Next you have the Urvan. So this refers to the individual soul which is central to person's identity, and we said this also continues after death. Okay, so the soul continues its journey after death. And at last we have the Fravashi, or the concept of the pre-existent soul. So this refers to a protective, pre-existing spirit or soul that exists before birth and continues to guide and protect the individual after death. Now this Fravashi, or the pre-existent soul, is particularly interesting because in a way it reflects an ancient notion of the soul as a heroic or protective force. Now this concept in a way may have originated from aristocratic traditions where rulers and heroes were believed to retain protective powers even after death. Now, over time we see that this notion, okay, of the Fravashi or the pre-existent soul became democratized, similar to how in ancient Greece any deceased person could be regarded as a hero, or how the dead in ancient Egypt were thought to join the god Osiris. However, while this idea was popular in Zoroastrianism, we see that Zoroaster himself did not emphasize on the Fravashi. Instead, he focused more on the concept of the end, which has both objective as well as subjective dimensions. So the objective would be the religious teachings and the subjective would be the individual's religious life. Now when we look at afterlife and judgment, we see that the view of afterlife in Zoroastrianism contains several elements which we see will be similar to what we find in the Indo-Iranian traditions. And this basically suggests, okay, that Zoroastrian beliefs evolved from a common heritage with Vedic religion. Now, one striking feature is the soul's encounter with the end or religion after death. Now, it is believed that if a person lived righteously, then the end appears as a beautiful young woman who welcomes them. But we see that if the person lived wickedly or lived a very wicked life, then we see that the end will appear as a hideous hag or a kind of a monster or a very evil or a bad looking personality. Now, we see that this feminine encounter, okay, in a way is similar to the Vedic imagery. Where we see that soul encounters female figures in the afterlife. Now, we see that before reaching the final destination, the soul must cross the bridge of requital or the bridge of requital. Now, this basically is a bridge that connects the physical world to the afterlife. And therefore this bridge plays a very important role in Zoroastrian eschatology. It is said that just souls or the souls of people who have lived a very just, truth and righteous life are able to cross it successfully. On the other hand, we see that souls of the wicked are not successful in crossing this bridge. And as a result of it, what happens is that the just souls who have successfully crossed this bridge, they enter heaven, they reach heaven or paradise, and the wicked souls are not successful in crossing the bridge and they fall into hell. And again we see that this concept of the bridge is quite similar to the Vedic traditions where souls are guided across a similar bridge by spiritual beings. Now, in a way we see that in Zoroastrianism, this passage is a central moment in the soul's journey. And this basically marks the transition of the soul from the mortal world in which we live in to either reward in paradise or punishment in hell. Now, after crossing the bridge of requital, the soul must undergo a kind of a judgment process. And therefore, it is important for us to look at what is this judgment process and what is the afterlife journey of the soul. Now, as we have said, once the soul has crossed the bridge, okay, the soul must undergo a kind of a judgment process. Now, this judgment process is presided by three divine figures. Now, who are these three? So, one, you have Mitra, that is God of covenants. Then you have Sraosha, that is the divine figure which embodies obedience. And you have Rashnu, the embodiment of justice. Now, these figures or these divine figures will in a way weigh the soul's actions. Basically, during its lifetime. So basically, it will try to see what actions, what good actions, what bad actions have been done, and based on this, we see that the soul is judged on three categories of deeds, that is good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. And we see that these are central to the Zoroastrian ethics. Now, as the soul is journeying towards paradise, it reflects the significance of these moral categories of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Now, as the soul reaches to the higher realms, as it goes higher and higher, it passes through stages that are associated with virtuous actions. Now, let's take a look at these stages. So, if we are in a way to kind of draw an imagery, so this is the earth, we say, as the soul goes higher and higher, it must pass through three stages, and each of these stages are associated with the virtuous actions. So first we see that it passes through the stars, which represent good thoughts. Then you have the moon that represents good words, and finally the sun that represent good deeds. So here we see that the basic understanding is, once you have good thoughts, once you think in a just manner, in a righteous manner, you are then able to speak of it. So what is in your mind does get manifested in your words as well. And then we see that this ultimately also leads to your actions. Now, we see that once these stages are completed, the soul reaches paradise. Okay, after completion of the three stages. Now, here we see that the soul is welcomed by Vohu Mana, that is the embodiment of the good mind. And here the soul is then led to the golden throne of Ahura Mazda, the supreme God. And therefore we see that the soul's place in paradise reflects its alignment with truth and righteousness. And therefore Zoroastrianism's cosmic and ethical principle. Now this is with regards to people who have crossed the bridge successfully and who have reached paradise or heaven. Now what happens to those who are not able to cross the bridge successfully? Well, we see that just as paradise had multiple stages, hell also has its own hierarchy. So we see that souls who have committed wicked deeds ascend to one of the 4 levels of hell. So here we see that they experience punishment according to the gravity of the sins. So therefore if your sins are more graver, if your sins are more intense, the higher will be the level of punishment that you encounter in hell. Now we see that all souls are in a way not easily classified into good and bad. So basically we see that if the soul is good, it is directly going to paradise or heaven. If the soul has done sins, if the soul is a wicked soul, it goes to hell. Now the question may come, what happens to those who cannot be classified as entirely good or entirely bad? Well, for those whose good and evil deeds are balanced, you have the intermediary state. And here we see that Zoroastrian eschatology will offer a kind of an intermediary state, or what Christians would generally call as a purgatory state. Now this state exists between heaven and hell. It is reserved for those who cannot be judged in either direction. So that means you cannot either put them in hell, you cannot put them in paradise. Now we come to the final topic of today's class, that is the comparative elements between Indian and Iranian beliefs. So what aspects of the afterlife do we find similar in both the Iranian as well as in the Indian belief system? Now we see that the Zoroastrian afterlife beliefs have quite a number of parallels with the ancient Indian religious concepts. Why? Because likely we see that this similarity is in a way rooted in the shared Indo-Iranian belief Now, in a way we see that both traditions have a journey involving a bridge. Okay, in both traditions, you also have divine encounters. As we have seen there, for the good soul, it is a beautiful woman, whereas for a wicked soul, it is a hideous hag. And also you have the concept of the final judgment. Now, in the Vedic texts, like the Yajurveda and the Upanishads, we see that the soul's journey will have similar trials and encounters with the spiritual beings. And therefore, the presence of this celestial bridge and the presence of dogs as guardians of the passage also appear in Indian belief. So this also in a way indicates deep cultural and religious connections between the between the two traditions. However, we see that Zoroastrianism adds its own unique elements to this particular framework or to this particular concept, because it emphasizes the moral dimensions of the soul's journey. And therefore, the Zoroastrian focus is on the ethical triad, as we have seen, of good thoughts, words and deeds. And therefore, this gives a very essential aspect on personal responsibility and moral integrity in shaping one's afterlife destiny. Okay, so that's it for today. In the next class, we shall take a look at the Zoroastrian eschatology, which will give in a way a detailed vision of the end times that is focused on the ultimate defeat of evil and the final restoration of the creation. We'll also look at the doctrine of the resurrection, the look at the end times and the final battle, and ultimately we'll take a look at the purifications of souls, the final judgments, the renewal of the world, and how do we find this in Zoroaster's early teachings and how it may have affected or impacted other religions. So till then, thank you.